Okay, this is the a part in the series that I'm doing on the Balanced Scorecard project. Again, this is part of your grade in the class, and I'm just spending a little bit of time to go over some certain things. And this one covers a student example. There's nothing like looking at what another student has done. Before I get started, I just want you to know that this student, which I'm going to refer to as Jane Doe, signed a waiver allowing me to use her project as an example. So I don't want you to feel like I'm going to use your project as an example if what you're doing is confidential. And she works, and I hope that you downloaded the handout that goes with this, which is the pieces of the project that I'm going to go over. It's not her full, complete project, but yeah, I hope that I've given you enough to show how she actually designed her scorecard. So where I started, instead of starting with the history of the company, which is the first part of the project, I've got right into the mission and strategy and how she's related that to her balanced scorecard. So the first sentence here says, the mission of the East Central Regional Hospital is to provide safe, competent, and compassionate services to persons with mental illnesses and/or developmental disabilities. So this is kind of a broad mission for the whole hospital. But what Jane Doe actually did was she was responsible, and still is as far as I know, for the training department. I think they called it the Office of Learning and Organizational Development. And so she's also, at the end of this segment, has showed the strategic focus of her particular area. It's to develop and enhance and maintain the workplace environment to attract and support highly motivated, well-trained, individual-focused employees and develop future leaders in the workplace. So that's where she started. She's given me the strategy for her overall for her organization and then for her particular department, because the balanced scorecard is to relate to your particular job. Okay, so she started with learning and growth. Sounds pretty easy because she's already in the responsible for the training department. Okay, so she has down here that for learning and growth is going to be to improve training initiatives for employees. The measure that she's going to use here, and again, this is her goal, is to complete and implement improvements to training. So I think this is actually what she was doing on her job. They were really wanting to beef up their training and also get more involved in having e-learning modules for their employees. And so she has down here for her target to complete by October 31, 2013. Now I realize this only covers the first 3 parts of the balanced scorecard. These are really the critical parts. If you get these first 3 parts down, the rest, the other 4, should come fairly easily. So I haven't taken the time to put that up here, but I just wanted to show you that the measure here, again, is to complete and implement improvements, not a financial measure like we'd ordinarily think of. And then she's got a target date to have those completed by. Some other things to notice, because I have included all 7 parts in your handout, is that she comes back in the end and links it back to her strategy. Another thing that you'll notice if you look at her project is that she has 2 measures in learning and growth. Now, for the purposes of this project, I'm only requiring you to have 1 measure. But she did something that I frequently have noticed students do, and that is she grouped really 2 different things together that needed to be separated. Because one of the training initiatives that she was needed to improve was for the orientation process for new employees. And the other one that her department was tasked with improving was those veteran employees, people that already worked there. So the training initiatives were different from those 2 groups. And so I had her to break that out. But one thing you'll notice is if you look at her 2 different ones, her objective measure and targets are a little bit different, and she does have a different target date for each one of those trainings. Is that her logic of the underlying measure and the source of the information and frequency and the relationship to the strategic goals or objectives is identical. And that's okay, because it's a very similar thing. Training is very much linked to some of the strategic objectives of the hospital. With that, I'll go on to the next her next perspective, which was her financial perspective. Okay, her financial perspective objective was to reduce training costs by developing e-learning courses. Now, what you'll notice from this is Jane is really in a cost center. So she's not doing anything to bring revenues into the company, but your financial measure needs to be somewhere in either in dollars and cents or in or a percentage. We're going to do something by a percentage. So if you don't want to mention dollars, just say we're going to grow or we're going to reduce costs by a certain percentage. So she has down here for her measure that she's going to wants to reduce the average cost of training per employee. Notice here that the measure is not specific. It's pretty general because we don't know what the goal is going to be. The target is going to show you the goal. The target says that she's going to decrease the average cost of training per employee by 40%. Now that sounds really it sounds really aggressive, doesn't it? 40%. I mean, how is she going to do that by 40%? Why is she putting such a goal out there? But I think they were spending a lot of money on sending people away for trainings, and they were planning on this training that she was in the process of developing on the computer to be saving them a lot of money in their budget. Also, notice how this is very much linked to her first objective, which is actually the learning and growth, to write these new, to develop the training. So these are very much linked together, and that's something that we learn as we study the balanced scorecard, is how a lot of these objectives can be closely linked. This just puts the financial perspective to it. Also notice that she has not just said we're going to reduce training costs, because anybody can want to reduce costs, but she's telling me how she did it. She's going to be developing e-learning courses. Going on to the next perspective, she has her internal business process as improving the framework of data collection of learning needs by creating an interface that captures the key indicators between training and competency. And this is something that they were actually going to do. They're trying to make this link between training and competency. So she realized that the data that they needed to collect and how they needed to improve this would fall under the internal business process. And they were doing a learning needs assessment, and so she was going to look at the aggregate data from that. And the target was to achieve a composite rating indicating +1, which is a perfect positive correlation from the results. Now this sounds very statistical to me, but this is exactly what she was doing at work and what she was tasked with doing, and she knew exactly what she was talking about. So I don't have to understand every piece and every part of your job and the project to see that this is definitely an internal business process, and she's come up with a very specific target that she's measuring it with. And going on down to her last one, the customer perspective. Again, these are her internal customers. So she wants to find out if these quality of the new training tools that she's developing are meeting their needs. So her measure here are going to be the results of the training satisfaction surveys. And her initial target with this, again, it's very specific. She wants to receive a rating score of at least 4.3 out of 5 on the survey. Now, it could be if they continue to poll these people in training, maybe the next year they want these numbers to go up. But right now, they're developing this new training, and so I think they set 4.3 out of 5 as what they thought was a reasonable goal. So I've gone over the 4 perspectives of the student's project. You will find many more details if you download this piece of her project online. It is not the full, complete project, but it is her complete scorecard and the mission and strategy of the organization. That is the piece that goes before that. And I'll be talking more about all the pieces and parts of the scorecard you'll read about in your project, and I'll be talking about some of them in some more of these clips. So stay tuned for the next one.